Hey everyone, it's Erin Sorensen with Hail Varsity, and I am joined by recruiting analyst Greg Smith, also of Hail Varsity, and we are here to talk about and recap the early signing period, which is pretty much over for Nebraska at this point. This day did not have any drama. Greg, how are you? How are you feeling?
I am well. This is an exciting day for me. Like I am always very excited for this day. I tweeted out earlier; it's my favorite day of the year. So I am excited and I'm happy to be here. But the day was good though. Like you can't complain about a day in which was it all 19 of Nebraska's high school signees had their letters of intent in by I think it was 9:58 actually on the dot when that last one Jalen Weaver out in California came in, and there was no drama. There was no, will this person sign or not? Like there were, and then most of them sent theirs in at the exact time they said they were going to. I think the only two that were late were Fedoni and Weaver at the end. Even though Fedoni had already signed, we saw the pictures from the ceremony and the videos and stuff at his school. So that's good. That's needed, and that's exactly what, if you're Nebraska, you hope that this day goes like basically every year.
Yeah, and I mean, especially in such a weird year, which, I mean, Scott Frost, he could have easily had his press conference much earlier in the day. I think they put them out further in the just at a chance that somebody maybe a little bit later in the day, but he could have easily had that press conference before noon because
Right.
that's how this day went for him. But he did say there are some players in this class that he has never seen face to face. He's only seen them over Zoom. He's only seen them over video. He's only had phone calls. So when they arrive on campus, which he also did note that 13 out of those or 13 out of this class will be enrolling in January. So early enrollees, I believe, is the number he said. But regardless, it's been one of those years where, again, when you're having the head coach say, I've some of these guys I've never seen in person, uh, to have a day that lacks drama is probably your best outcome. It went about as well as you can imagine in a normal year, even better in a year like this.
Yeah, absolutely. It is pretty remarkable when you say it that way that it went so drama free because of that, and it's even more unique that when he says that they have guys in the class that he has not like met face to face, it's more unique for Nebraska specifically because of the way that they like to recruit. Like they really do have a process in which they like to kind of go about this, starting from when guys are underclassmen to get them on campus for spring game and unofficial visits and come for practice visits and junior days and all of that, and builds all the way up to their senior year when they take those official visits, which no one got to take this year. And so Nebraska's process of how they really like to build that relationship got broken, as it did with a lot of schools this year. So to have the outcome be what it was today, it is a really good thing for them.
Let's talk about the one individual who didn't sign. This isn't dramatic at all. This is a transfer. He is I can you please say his last name? I don't think I can.
Chris Kolarevic is his
Thank
last
you.
is his name.
Thank you. So Chris, I just, it was one of those things where I'm like, I knew I would stumble over it for some reason, but he is currently, well, he's transferring to Nebraska he's at Northern Iowa.
In Iowa. Yep.
So there's a little bit of a difference with is he a graduate transfer?
He is. So I wonder if part of that is because, and I wish I had thought of this before I would have asked him, because I've talked to him, is if he has not actually graduated yet, right? Because all of those rules about when you can talk about guys publicly and when I mean, obviously he couldn't send a signed letter of intent to Nebraska if he hasn't done the first part of what needs to happen yet, just because technically the graduation hasn't happened. So he is another player that's in this class. He counts for the number, but that's why you did not hear Scott Frost talk about him today, is because the rules prohibit him from then talking about him yet, because I don't think that he's been able to send a letter of intent in yet.
And I think that's if I remember correctly, when Darian Daniels transferred to Nebraska, he was a graduate transfer from Oklahoma State. Uh, he I think was in the same situation where he was waiting for his graduation to happen before he could officially share that signing news. However, Chris is expected to be in Nebraska starting in January. He is going to be on campus relatively soon. So again, there's no drama there. If you're somebody who is thinking, what could have possibly happened? Why I'm seeing 20 names on the list? Why are only 19 of them signed? Chris is a different scenario. So just don't fret. That's why. Now, there was another piece that wasn't dramatic for Nebraska, but definitely has some Nebraska intrigue. Avante Dickerson from Westside. He's been committed to Minnesota since last spring. He was expected to sign today. I think people started to hear some rumblings that might be changing. He ultimately made the decision to hold off on signing at this time because he just feels like he needs more time to think, to really process this decision before he signs on the dotted line. You had the quick little recap story on Hail Varsity. What was your takeaway from that decision from Avante?
Yeah, I know it is really an interesting one because going back to April when he committed to Minnesota, it was a surprise because the thought was is that he was either if he was going to end his process at that point, it was going to be for Nebraska, and obviously it was not. It was for Minnesota, and part of that thinking was that he had already built such a good relationship with Nebraska, and had been to Nebraska's campus several times, being just in Omaha. I feel like he was at almost every game last year that he could come down to, and he had never been to Minnesota's campus. And so, and that was that was right at the beginning of kind of the shutdown and quarantine. At that point, we thought that it would end at some point soon, and it didn't, obviously. And so, since he had never been up there, people were kind of taken aback that he made that commitment. And then you kind of get closer to today, and you were starting to hear those rumblings that okay, maybe that Nebraska had been continuing to recruit him, and in all of that meantime, a handful of his friends got into Nebraska's class as well. There's obviously still a need for a defensive back in this class, and as you continue to see on the field, Travis Fisher has done a nice job with defensive backs and getting them ready. Cam Taylor-Britt is kind of the shining example of that right now, right? And so you put all of that together, and it's closer to home, and you're like, okay, you could start to see something going on. But then he decides that he's not going to sign anywhere right now, which, if you're Minnesota, cannot be good because you had him literally for them in the boat all the way this whole time. And then if you're Nebraska, it is a good sign that he did not sign with Minnesota today or anyone else, but you would like to get that signature in this window if you could, if at all possible, for Nebraska, because Avante Dickerson is a top 100 four-star player. He's one of the best cornerbacks in the country. He's going to be one of very few kids, especially at that rating, that is still going to be available between now and February. His recruitment could really blow up and look totally different if he indeed actually takes this all the way to February.
Right, and that's important if you're somebody who maybe doesn't follow recruiting very closely. When Greg says they want to get him in this window, the early signing period actually does allow for these players to sign anytime between Wednesday and the end of day on Friday. So they have a little bit of time. So if he'd never said in his announcement that he needed to wait until February. He just said he needed some time to think. That time could be a night, it could be a day. We don't know what that looks like long term, but yeah, it definitely bodes well for Nebraska if he can do more immediate, quick thinking versus dragging that out more long term and allowing other schools to hop in for his, and potentially get him interested in what they have to offer. I have to ask though, when you look at this list, this is a good list. Nebraska has, one 4-star that arguably could be a 5-star, maybe should be a 5-star in Thomas Fidone. And I think you even have some 3-stars who are teetering on that line of 4-star as well. So I think there are some gems in this class that probably are a little bit lower ranked than maybe their ceiling would project them to. Who are you most excited about, or who do you think maybe has that potential that, the star rating doesn't maybe tell the whole story for?
Yeah, the first guy that I always go to on this one is Henry Latowski, the offensive lineman out of Iowa, who's like 6'5", 6'6", 320. And if you've ever seen, it's
Just
massive as a
casual size,
17-year-old.
not that.
And he's a young senior as well. Like, it's just like, to have guys that size at that age, it's just ridiculous to me. It's still kind of unfathomable. And I do this for a living, and it is still weird to see that on a yearly basis. And Nebraska continues to recruit them and recruit them well. And he moves so well for his size. He's got a really good demeanor. Frost shouted him out today as one of his favorite recruits to talk to, and I would totally agree with Frost on that. I think he has a chance to really be a guy out of this offensive line group that ends up playing early. And early is relative when you're talking about linemen. I always caution people that's year 2 is early for me when it comes to linemen, because it's just so hard to come in as a true freshman and do it. You rarely see that. Other guys that I kind of have my eye on is you mentioned that there's a lot of gems in this class, and because of that, it gets really difficult to separate. So out of the wide receiver group, right? So Sean Hardy, Kamante Grimes, Latrell Neville, all of them 3-star guys, but all of them guys that have really high upsides to me, that are all really good players. I think one of those guys, and if you maybe pick right now, I would go with Latrell Neville, is someone who's going to have a really big impact at Nebraska. Mekhi Gabor is a guy at linebacker that I really like. Gabe Irvin is a kid that I describe him as a kid that looks like a Big Ten running back. As someone he's got a good build to him. He's not slow by any means. He can run between the tackles, but can also catch the ball out of the backfield. I think he's more of a style of Big Ten running back that you would see on other teams that Nebraska has been, struggling to find a little bit, as we've seen the issues at running back. But you're right, there are a lot of different kids in this class that would not surprise me at all if in a couple of years you're like, whoa, that kid was only a so-and-so star. He was just a mid-range 3-star. I think that could definitely happen with this class.
The one player that I personally find really interesting, and I think his star rating doesn't really tell the full story, and I think a big reason for that is because he was hindered by COVID-19 restrictions, where he wasn't getting the same level of evaluation that he would have in a normal year, was James Carney. He's an 8-man football player. I mean, this is a big day for him, and he's somebody where I think Nebraska probably wasn't necessarily in need of another tight end when he came on the radar, but I think he's also a player that you can't turn away from. I think when they realized what he had to offer, it didn't matter if you had an entire class of tight ends. You don't
Right.
walk away from an athlete, and that's what James Carney is, in my opinion. And I'm excited for him because his whole signing day experience just seems like it was sort of a dream come true in a lot of
Right.
ways. But I'm excited for him and to kind of see his story evolve with Nebraska.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too with him because remember we talked so much throughout this cycle about, will James Carney get an offer? Remember, he was committed to Ohio for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all the back and forth because everyone in the world knew that they wanted to get Thomas Fedoni. He ended up getting him. They wanted AJ Rollins as well. Both of those guys committed really closely together. And you're like, well, do they really want to take a third tight end? And that was really even early or before the season when you didn't know like how Nebraska would be able to utilize tight ends, and they've done a better job with that. And then you get his personal story of kind of adding 50 pounds between his junior and senior year and continuing to work on his game. Like, he does have a really fascinating story that I think that it'll be really cool to see more and more people continue to learn about James Carney.
Yeah, and Scott Frost did say, they are relatively old at the tight end position. They don't have a lot of younger guys in that room, so taking 3 is not that big of a deal. It's actually something that they probably needed, so it works out well. And honestly, there's room to continue growing in this class, and I think that was the thing that I know I really gained from you, is that this class has the option to go up to 25. That's sounds to be about where they want to be. And maybe at one point the concern was, if you take 3 tight ends, are you going to have room? But they have room at this point to still look at who's available heading into the February signing date, or to look at the transfer portal if somebody is the right fit from that.
Right, absolutely, and I do think that they're going to try and have a spot or two, probably two, for the transfer portal. As I think there's been over just this month over 200 players that have
Wow.
entered the transfer portal. Like you will definitely have your pick of guys out there if you can find the right fit. So that'll definitely be a thing. But I cannot. I need to go back real quick to what you said about underrated players. I could not let that moment pass without mentioning Kobe Brett's from Omaha West Side as well, who I think is someone, you mentioned guys that were hurt by COVID-19 and not having evaluations. I think if Kobe had went to different camps and schools were able to see his athletic ability, they would have been blown away by him. So for Nebraska to get him kind of under the radar without like a lot of other competition coming in for him, I think is going to end up being a big deal. And I think he has a really, really bright future at Nebraska.
I will say, if you're somebody who wants to get to know a little bit more about Kobe Brett, you're watching this right now on our YouTube channel. You can just head over to the 2020 Nebraska Football playlist tab. And in fact, Kobe Brett is not the only person that you can get to know a little bit more about. We have 4 videos with current signees: Kobe Brett, Thomas Fidone, Heinrich Harburg, and Randolph Kapai, excuse me. I was trying to rattle them off, and all 4 of those videos are really interesting. You'll learn a little bit about who they are, why they picked Nebraska, what they want you to know, and even some fun questions like who they might be rooming with. Heinrich gets into chili and cinnamon rolls. There's even a favorite athlete that took a turn that was supposed to go a different direction, but ends up being a really good answer. So you're already here. You might as well just head to those other videos. They're already on the 2020 Nebraska football playlist. Just go watch them right now. I don't see why you wouldn't. But yeah, Greg, any final thoughts before I let you out of here? Because there's still plenty of work to be done today.
Yeah, I think this class to me, the thing that I keep coming back to overall is the word work. And this class's eagerness to want to just get to work, and just like talking to a lot of these kids. And I think that kind of is reflected in the what Frost said, 13 different early enrollees. Basically, that's what, over half of the high school guys in the class, over
Well
half of
over,
the overall
yeah,
class.
yeah.
Yeah. Coming in early, like that's a high number, and all of them will tell you to a man that that is because they are just excited to come in and get to work. It was not a lot of, and I'll have a story on this coming up this weekend, is there was not a lot of, oh, I think I'm going to come in and start, and that's why I have to come in early. It was, I'm just eager to get around my teammates and come learn from these coaches, be in the weight room, and get to work. And I found that really impressive.
Yeah, in one of those videos I just mentioned, Heinrich Harburg talks about he just wants to come and work his butt off, but he understands there's a lot of work ahead of him. So thank you, Greg. I appreciate your insight. If people want to continue, if you want to know more from Greg, just head over to hailvarsity.com. We have a lot of content from signing day so far and plenty more to come. You can get Greg's opinion on what players mean to this class. He has some of his top 5 Greg's guys for the early signing period. And then, like I said, much more. And don't forget to keep checking out those videos. We'll actually have the signing day press conference from Scott Frost available if you want to head over and watch that as well. So if you are a recruiting fan or not, it doesn't matter. We have a little bit of something for everyone, and certainly a lot of it. So keep on reading, keep on watching. We appreciate it. Again, I'm Erin Sorensen. He's Greg Smith, and we will talk to you later.